My throat tightened as he stood before me, his gaze commanding yet patient. I knew what he wanted before he even spoke the words, a silent conversation our bodies had been having since the moment we met in that crowded gallery. The first time. He told me to kneel. I surprised myself, not because I obeyed, but because of how desperately I wanted to. Power had always been something I clutched with white knuckles, something I never relinquished, until him. With each heartbeat, I felt my resistance melting away, replaced by a strange new freedom I hadn't known existed. The control one surrendered, became a different kind of strength, one that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. What would happen when he discovered I wasn't just following his rules, but creating my own? Subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that explore the complex dance of power, desire, and self-discovery. The gallery hummed with the pretentious chatter of New York's art elite. I navigated through the sea of black turtlenecks and designer glasses, clutching my complimentary champagne like a life raft. This wasn't my scene. I was only here because my roommate Lily had dragged me along, then promptly abandoned me to flirt with one of the caterers. I drifted toward a massive canvas that dominated the far wall. Bold strokes of crimson slashed across a field of midnight blue, violent yet somehow controlled. Unlike the other pieces that left me cold, this one pulled at something in my chest. You're looking at it wrong. The voice came from behind me, low and certain. I turned, an automatic, defense rising to my lips. Who was he to tell me how to look at art? But the words dissolved when I saw him. He stood a few inches taller than me, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that contrasted with the casual disarray of the room. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to look through, rather than at me. Excuse me? I managed, hating how my voice sounded, breathless, uncertain. You're tilting your head to the right. The artist intended it to be viewed straight on. He stepped beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. Try again. I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself adjusting my stance, facing the painting head-on. The effect was immediate. What had seemed like random violence transformed into a scene of sterling intimacy. Two forms locked in an embrace that was either passion or struggle. Maybe both. Oh, I said softly. Yes, he replied, satisfaction evident in that single syllable. Emma Rilland. She's brilliant at hiding meaning in plain sight. I glanced at him, surprised. You know her work well? I own several pieces. A slight smile curved his lips. Daniel Kavanaugh. He didn't extend his hand, and somehow that made the introduction more intimate than a touch would have been. Olivia Bennett, I offered, then immediately wondered why I'd given him my real name. His eyes, deep brown I noticed now, held mine for a beat too long. And what brings you here tonight, Olivia Bennett? You don't seem particularly interested in the rest of the collection. My roommate's idea, I admitted. She's somewhere making poor life choices with the catering staff. That earned me a genuine smile that transformed his face from merely handsome to devastating honesty. Refreshing in these circles. A woman in an architectural black dress approached. Jus, touching his arm with familiar ease. Daniel, the Morgans are asking for you. He nodded without looking at her, his eyes still on mine. It was a pleasure to correct your perspective, Olivia. Before I could formulate a response that didn't sound pathetic, he was gone, moving through the crowd with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where they belong in the world. I turned back to the painting, but its magic had dissipated. With a sigh, I finished my champagne and went to find Lily. It was time to leave Dot as we exited into the cool autumn night. I resolved to forget Daniel Kavanaugh and his arrogant certainty. I wouldn't see him again anyway. I was wrong. A week later, I was buried in work at my desk when an email notification chimed. I almost ignored it. Another deadline loomed, and as the newest editor at Prism Publishing, I couldn't afford mistakes. But the subject line caught my eye: private viewing, Rilland collection. The message was brief, almost terse. Ms. Bennett, your interest in Emma Reland's work was evident. I'm hosting a private viewing of her newest collection this Friday at 8 p.m. The address is below. No RSVP necessary. Either you'll come or you won't. Daniel Kavanaugh stared at the screen, rereading the words until they blurred. How had he gotten my email? I hadn't given him my contact information. The thought should have unsettled me, but instead I felt a flutter of something dangerous in my stomach. Someone sent you flowers? Melissa peered over the partition between our desks, eyebrows raised at my expression. No, I clicked the email closed. Just a gallery invitation. Fancy. She popped her gum. You going? I haven't decided. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. The decision had been made the moment I saw his name, Friday evening found. Me standing outside a converted warehouse in Chelsea, second-guessing everything from my outfit, a simple black dress that skirted the line between professional and evening wear, to my presence there. The building was unmarked except for a small intercom panel. I pressed the button marked K before I could talk myself out of it. Yes, his voice, even filtered through the speaker, sent a jolt through me. It's Olivia Bennett, I paused. From the gallery? A beat of silence then. I know who you are, Olivia. The door buzzed open. The elevator was industrial, all exposed metal and concrete. It rumbled upward to the top floor, where the doors slid open to reveal a space that took my breath away. The loft was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline. But it was the art that dominated, dozens of pieces arranged throughout the open space, each perfectly lit to create individual worlds of color and emotion. And there, standing by a window with a glass of what looked like whiskey, was Daniel Kavanaugh. You came? No surprise in his voice, just that same quiet certainty I remembered. I was curious. I stepped into the space, trying to project more confidence than I felt. This is quite a collection, a passion. He gestured around. Or an obsession, depending on who you ask. I moved toward the nearest piece, a smaller canvas than the one from the gallery, but unmistakably Roland's work. This one featured swirls of deep green and gold, creating a sense of being pulled underwater. You have good instincts, he said, coming to stand beside me. That's one of her best. It's called Surrender. The word sent a strange ripple down my spine. It's beautiful. Disturbing, but beautiful. The best things often are. He studied me rather than the painting. I expected you to ask how I found your email. I met his gaze directly. Would you tell me if I did? A smile tugged at his lips. Probably not. Then what's the point of asking? I moved to the next piece, aware of him following, a step behind. Most people would be unsettled. Maybe I am. I glanced back at him. Or maybe I'm just good at hiding it. I don't think you are, he said softly. Good at hiding things, I mean. Your face gives everything away. The observation felt intimate, invasive. I changed the subject. Where is everyone else? I thought this was a viewing. It is. He took a sip of his whiskey. You're viewing it. I stopped walking. You mean it's just me? Just us? He nodded once. Is that a problem? It should have been. Every warning bell was ringing in my head. But instead of leaving, I heard myself ask, why me? Because you looked at the painting wrong, then allowed yourself to be corrected. He set his glass down on a nearby table. That's rarer than you might think. The way he said corrected sent another strange pulse through me. I needed space. To think clearly. May I look around? Of course. He gestured expansively. Would you like a drink? White wine if you had it. He moved to a small bar area while I wandered the space, trying to gather my thoughts. The art was genuinely impressive. Each piece seemed to tell a story of containment and release, of boundaries tested and sometimes broken. I found myself drawn to a triptych of small canvases, each progressively darker in tone. Stages of submission, Daniel said, appearing at my side with a glass of wine. One of her early series. I took the wine, careful not to let our fingers touch. You have a theme going. Do I? His eyes held mine, challenging. Control, power dynamics, submission. I gestured around us. It's not exactly subtle. Instead of being offended, he looked pleased. No, it's not. I find subtlety overrated in matters of importance. And these are matters of importance to you? They define me. The simple honesty in his voice was startling, as they might define you if you were willing to explore them. I nearly choked on my wine. Excuse me? Your reaction to the artwork. The way you respond to direction. His eyes were intent on mine. You're curious about submission, even if you don't recognize it yet. Indignation flared. That's presumptuous, is it? He took a step closer. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move. The command was soft but unmistakable. Every instinct screamed at me to step back, to reject the implied control. Instead, I found myself frozen in place, my breath coming faster as he slowly circled me. Interesting, he murmured, coming back to face me. You can move now. I stepped back immediately, angry at him, but even angrier at myself for complying. That proves nothing, doesn't it? He smiled slightly. Finish your tour, Olivia. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready to admit what you're feeling. I wanted to throw the wine in his face. I wanted to leave. I wanted ... I didn't know what I wanted, and that terrified me more than anything else. I spent the next hour wandering the loft, trying to maintain my composure while keenly aware of Daniel's presence. He kept his distance, answering my occasional questions about specific pieces, but otherwise letting me explore alone. It should have put me at ease. Instead, the space between us seemed charged, a current running from him to me that intensified. The longer I stayed, finally, I found myself before the largest canvas in the collection, a stunning piece dominated by shades of purple and black, with a single streak of white cutting through the darkness. This one, I said, not turning around. What's it called? Choice. His voice was closer than I expected. It's new. You're the first person to see it outside the studio. I felt a strange pride at that. It's magnificent. Yes, but he wasn't looking at the painting. I set my empty glass on a nearby shelf. I should probably go. Why? Because it's late. Because I barely know you. Because you've made your interests clear, and they're not something I'm familiar with, aren't they? He moved to stand in front of me, blocking my view of the painting. You haven't left yet, Olivia. You stayed for over an hour in the private space of a man who just told you he's interested in dominance and submission. What does that tell you about yourself? Heat rushed to my face. That I appreciate good art, among other things. His eyes searched mine. I'd like to show you something else. You're free to refuse. My heart pounded in my ears. What is it? This way. He turned and walked toward a door I hadn't noticed before, partially hidden behind a freestanding wall that displayed several smaller works. Every rational thought told me to leave, to forget Daniel Kavanaugh and his presumptions about my desires. Instead, I followed him. The room beyond was smaller, more intimate. Unlike the gallery space, this one was clearly personal. A sitting area with leather furniture, bookshelves lining one wall, a desk in the corner. A living space, my office, he explained, moving to the desk. I work from home most days. What exactly do you do? I asked, realizing I knew almost nothing about him beyond his art collection. I run an investment firm. Venture capital primarily. Focused on tech startups. He unlocked a drawer and removed a small black leather portfolio. Profitable, but not particularly interesting. And this, I nodded toward whatever he held. This is interesting. He gestured toward one of the armchairs. Please sit. I perched on the edge of the chair, watching as he took the seat opposite me. The leather portfolio rested on his lap, unopened. Before I show you this, I want to establish something. His tone shifted, became more formal. Everything between. U.S. is governed by choice, your choice. If at any point you want to leave, you say so and you go. No questions, no persuasion. I nodded slowly. Say it, please. I need to hear you acknowledge the terms. I understand, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. I can leave whenever I want. Good. He opened the portfolio and removed several photographs, which he placed on the coffee table between us. They were art photographs, black and white, beautifully composed. A woman's back, bare except for an intricate rope design. Hands bound with silk ribbon. A blindfolded profile, lips slightly parted. Nothing pornographic, but undeniably erotic in their restraint. What am I looking at? I asked, though I knew. Visual expression of what interests me. He watched my reaction carefully. The aesthetics of power exchange. The beauty of willing submission. I couldn't look away from the images. And the women in these photos, they wanted this. Very much so. They found freedom in it. He leaned forward slightly. That's what people outside the dynamic don't understand. True submission isn't about being lessened or controlled against your will. It's about the power of choice, choosing to give yourself over to someone you trust completely and without reservation. His words resonated in a way I wasn't prepared for. And what does the dominant person get from this? The privilege of that trust, the responsibility of it. His eyes held mine. And the pleasure of guiding someone to discover parts of themselves they never knew existed. I swallowed hard. Why show me this? Why me? Because from the moment you adjusted your stance in that gallery, I've been curious about what else you might be willing to adjust. He gathered the photographs, returning them to the portfolio. And because I think you're curious too. He was right, and that realization sent a jolt through me, equal parts fear and excitement. I don't know the first thing about any of this. I admitted, that's the best place to start. He set the portfolio aside. No preconceptions, no bad habits to unlearn. So what happens now? My voice was barely above a whisper. Now, nothing. He stood, signaling the end of our conversation. You go home. You think about what you've seen, what we've discussed. If you're interested in exploring further, you contact me. I blinked in surprise. That's it. For tonight, yes. He extended his hand to help me up, the first time he'd offered to touch. This only works if you come to it willingly, Olivia. With full awareness of what you're choosing. I placed my hand in his, feeling a current run up my arm at the contact. His grip was warm, firm, steadying me as I rose to my feet. And if I do contact you? I asked, not pulling my hand away. What then? Then we discuss boundaries, establish parameters. His thumb brushed lightly across my knuckles before he released me. Begin with small steps. The touch, brief as it was, left me strangely breathless. I should go. He nodded, leading me back through the gallery space to the elevator. As the doors opened, he said, one more thing. Yes, if you decide to explore this, there's one non-negotiable. Rule, complete honesty, always. Can you commit to that? I considered the question seriously. I think so. Not good enough. His voice hardened slightly. Yes or no, Olivia? Something in his tone made my spine straighten. Yes, I can be honest. Good. The subtle approval in that single word shouldn't have affected me as strongly as it did. Good night, then. As the elevator doors closed between us, I realized my heart was racing. But whether from fear or anticipation, I couldn't tell. 3 days passed. I didn't contact Daniel, though I thought about him constantly, about the photographs, about the way his voice changed when he gave a command. Each night I fell asleep, with those thoughts circling, waking with them still there. On the 4th day, my boss dropped a glossy invitation on my desk. Publishing industry gala tonight at the Whitman. I need you to cover it. Richard's down with the flu. She tapped the card. Black tie, lots of big names. Take notes for the blog, make connections, don't embarrass me. Tonight, I had plans. With Lily, takeout, and bad reality TV. I don't have anything to wear. Figure it out. She was already walking away. Car will pick you up at 7. The Whitman Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of New York's. Literary elite. I tugged self-consciously at the neckline of my borrowed dress. Melissa had come through with a sleek midnight blue number that fit me surprisingly well, and sipped lukewarm champagne while scanning the room for recognizable faces to mention. In my write-up, I was making notes about Jonathan. Porter's animated conversation with the newest literary wunderkind when a familiar voice spoke just behind me. Blue suits you? I turned to find Daniel standing there, impeccable in a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a vintage film. What are you doing here? I blurted, then winced at my lack of composure. Supporting the Literacy Foundation? His eyes moved appreciatively over me. And now, admiring the view, I didn't expect to see you here. Work assignment? I gestured vaguely with my champagne. I write for Prism's blog. Ah, the publishing house. He nodded. I believe we've funded several of their digital initiatives. Of course he had. The universe was apparently determined to entangle us. You haven't called, he said, changing the subject abruptly. I've been thinking. About? I glanced around, acutely aware of the crowded room. This isn't the place to discuss it. Fair enough. He took my nearly empty glass, setting it on a passing waiter's tray. Let's get you a proper drink. That champagne looks like it's been sitting for hours. Before I could respond, he placed his hand lightly at the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd toward the bar. The touch was barely there, professional, appropriate, but I felt it like a brand through the thin fabric of my dress. What would you like? He asked when we reached the bar. I should stick with champagne. I'm working. You're allowed to enjoy yourself while working. His eyes held mine. Tell me what you really want. The question felt weighted with meaning. Beyond the drink order. Gin and tonic, I said finally. With lime. A smile of approval flickered across his face. See. Simple honesty. He turned to the bartender. Gin and tonic with lime and a Macallan, neat. As we waited, he leaned slightly. Closer. Have you been thinking about our conversation, Olivia? About what I showed you? My pulse quickened. Yes, and? And I'm curious. I met his gaze directly, but cautious. Caution is wise. He accepted our drinks from the bartender, handing. And me mine. Experience has taught me that the most rewarding journeys often begin with hesitation. We moved to a quieter corner of the room, standing close enough to continue our conversation without being overheard. So what exactly would exploring this entail? I asked, the gin giving me courage. Initially, conversation. Understanding what attracts you to the idea, what concerns you. He sipped his whiskey. Then, if you're comfortable, we might try some simple exercises in control, such as... His eyes darkened slightly. Would you like a demonstration? Nothing inappropriate for the setting, I assure you. I hesitated, then nodded once. For the next 10 minutes, he said, his voice dropping to that quietly commanding tone I remembered, you will do exactly as I say. Small things only. If anything makes you uncomfortable, you say, stop, understood? Yes. The word came out breathier than I intended. Good. First, take a sip of your drink, but don't swallow until I tell you to. I raised the glass to my lips, feeling slightly foolish but oddly exhilarated. The gin was cool on my tongue, the flavor sharp. Hold it, he instructed, watching me intently. 1 second stretched into 5, then 10. Just as I thought I might have to disobey, he said, swallow. I did, the liquid burning a path down my throat. Now walk with me toward that painting. He nodded toward a large abstract on the far wall. Stand exactly 3 feet away from it. As we crossed the room, he continued giving small instructions. Smile at the woman in red. Stop for exactly 5 seconds. Now continue, each time. I complied. I felt a strange satisfaction that had nothing to do with the actions themselves, and everything to do with the way he watched me perform them. When we reached the painting, I positioned myself carefully, guessing at what 3 feet might be. 1 step back, he corrected gently. I adjusted my position. Very good. He came to stand beside me, close enough that our arms almost touched. What do you feel right now? I considered the question seriously, aware of every movement, every decision, and strangely calm. It was true. Beneath the nervousness and excitement was a surprising stillness. As if by surrendering these small choices, I'd quieted some perpetually chattering part of my mind. That's often the first revelation. His voice was soft, meant only for me. The peace that comes with relinquishing control in a safe context. We stood there for another moment, looking at the painting without really seeing it. Then he checked his watch. Your 10 minutes are up. You're free to do as you please. That's it? I couldn't keep the disappointment from my voice. A slow smile spread across his face. Were you expecting something more dramatic? I don't know what I expected. I took another sip of my drink, no longer needing permission. The point wasn't to overwhelm you, Olivia. It was to give you a taste, a small sample of what it feels like to follow another's lead completely. His eyes searched mine. Did you enjoy it? Yes, I admitted, though it seemed so inconsequential. The content of the commands matters less than the act of submission itself. He finished his whiskey. Though I promise, the content becomes far more interesting in private. Heat rushed through me at the implication. Before I could respond, a silver-haired man approached us, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. Kavanaugh. Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you were in London this week. Change of plans, Richard. Daniel's demeanor shifted seamlessly into business mode, though he kept his body angled slightly toward me. Have you met Olivia Bennett? She's with Prism Publishing. The conversation turned to industry small talk. I participated automatically, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying those 10 minutes. The strange satisfaction of following each instruction perfectly, the approval in Daniel's eyes when I did dot as the evening wore on. We were separated by the flow of the crowd. I completed my assignment, making notes and taking the obligatory photos for the blog, but always with an awareness of where he was in the room. Occasionally, our eyes would meet across the space, and that current would sit between us again, near midnight. As the event was winding down, I felt my phone vibrate with a text from an unknown number outside. Black Audi, if you want to continue our conversation. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. There was no signature, but I knew who it was from. I should say no. I should go home, think things through carefully, not rush into whatever this was. Instead, I gathered my coat and purse and stepped out into the cool night air. The car was idling at the curb, sleek and expensive. The back door opened as I approached, and there he was, watching me with those intense eyes. You came, he said, echoing his words from the gallery. I'm still curious. I slid into the seat beside him, the door closing with a soft, expensive sound. Good. He leaned forward slightly to address the driver. Home, Marcus. As the car pulled away from the curb, I asked, where are we going? My apartment. He turned those eyes on me. To discuss terms, boundaries, expectations, safe words. His voice was matter-of-fact. If we're going to do this properly, we need clarity, and if I'm not ready for that yet, then I'll have Marcus take you home. He held my gaze. This only works with enthusiastic consent, Olivia. At every stage. I should have felt afraid, or at least nervous, sitting in a stranger's car heading toward his apartment in the middle of the night. Instead, I felt a growing certainty. I'm ready to talk, I said finally. Just talk. Just talk, he agreed. A small smile playing at his lips. For now. Daniel's apartment was not what I expected. After the industrial minimalism of his gallery loft, I'd imagined something similarly stark, all chrome and leather and intimidating space. Instead, the penthouse we entered was surprisingly warm, with rich wood floors, bookshelves lining one wall, and comfortable-looking furniture arranged around a fireplace where a small flame danced. You seem surprised, he noted, watching me take it all in. It's homey. A smile touched his lips. Did you expect a dungeon? I flushed. I don't know what I expected. The loft is for work and art. This is where I live. He gestured toward the sitting area. Please make yourself comfortable. Would you like something to drink? Water, tea, wine? Tea would be nice. The request felt strangely intimate, more so than alcohol somehow. He nodded, disappearing into what I assumed was the kitchen. I moved to the wall of bookshelves, scanning titles ranging from financial theory to philosophy to classic literature. Many were well-worn, clearly read rather than displayed. Earl Grey, Daniel said, returning with 2 steaming mugs. I hope that's acceptable. Perfect. I accepted the offered cup, inhaling the bergamot scent. Thank you. He gestured toward the couch, taking a seat in the armchair opposite. The arrangement gave me space, I noticed, a deliberate choice that made me relax slightly. So I began, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. You wanted to discuss terms? Yes. He set his tea aside and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But first, I'd like to understand what you're seeking from this experience. The directness of the question caught me off guard. I'm not sure I know yet. Try, he encouraged. Even if it's just an impression, a feeling you're chasing. I considered his words, trying to articulate the nebulous desire that had brought me to his door. That moment at the gallery when you told me not to move, and then again tonight with all those small commands. There was something about it that felt ... I searched for the right word. Freeing, he suggested. Yes. The relief of having it named was palpable. Which makes no sense. How can being controlled feel like freedom? It makes perfect sense. His eyes were intent on mine. In your daily life, how many decisions do you make? Hundreds, thousands. From the moment you wake up, what to wear, what to eat, how to respond to emails, how to navigate social interactions. The weight of choice is exhausting, especially for someone who analyzes as deeply as you do. The observation was startlingly accurate. How would you know that about me? Your eyes. The way you watch everything, weighing, considering. He smiled slightly. I recognize it because I do the same thing, just from a different perspective. I sipped my tea, using the moment to gather my thoughts. So this is about relinquishing the burden of choice. Partly, it's also about trust, about vulnerability. In a controlled environment, his voice deepened slightly, about discovering aspects of yourself that everyday life doesn't reveal. And what exactly would that entail, practically speaking? That depends on our agreements. He reached for a small leather-bound notebook on the side table. I'd like to establish some parameters, what you're comfortable with, what you're curious about, what's absolutely off the table. The business-like approach was unexpected but reassuring. This wasn't some uncontrolled dive into the unknown. It was negotiated, considered. First, he continued, a safe word. Something you can say that will immediately stop whatever is happening, no questions asked. Like, stop? I suggested. He shook his head. Too common. It could come up naturally, in conversation or play. It needs to be something distinctive, something you wouldn't normally say in the context. I thought for a moment. Pine. Pine. His eyebrow raised slightly. I grew up in Arizona. Not many pine trees there. It always represented somewhere else, somewhere ... different. He nodded, writing it down. Pine it is. Say it once, I stop whatever I'm doing. Say it twice, I untie anything that needs untying. Remove any restraints. Say it 3 times, I take you home immediately, no discussion. The matter-of-fact way he outlined the escalating responses made this all suddenly very real. You're assuming there will be ... restraints. I'm not assuming anything. His eyes met mine. I'm establishing protocols for possibilities. Whether we ever use them is entirely up to our mutual comfort and desire. I nodded, oddly relieved by his thoroughness. What else? Physical boundaries. He tapped his pen against the notebook. What forms of touch are acceptable to you? What's off limits? The question was clinical, but it sent a flush of heat through me nonetheless. I'm not sure how to answer that, I admitted. I don't know what the options are. Fair point. He set the notebook down. I'll be more specific. Are you comfortable with my hands on your body? Your face, neck, arms, lower? Each word sent a new pulse of heat through me. Yes to all of that. Restraint. Holding your wrists, binding them? I swallowed hard. Yes. Pain? That gave me pause. What kind of pain? Spanking. Light slaps. Hair. Pulling. His voice remained clinically detached, but his eyes had darkened. Nothing that leaves marks unless specifically requested. The images his words conjured were startlingly arousing, I think. Yes, within reason. Everything we do will be within reason, Olivia. For the first time, a hint of the dominant tone entered his voice. I take this responsibility very seriously. I know. And somehow I did know. Despite barely knowing this man, I felt an inexplicable trust in his control. What else? Sexual boundaries. He held my gaze steadily. I won't pretend this dynamic isn't inherently erotic, but physical intimacy isn't required. We can explore power exchange without sex. But you'd prefer it with, I said, reading between the lines. A smile curved his lips. I find you incredibly attractive, so yes, I would eventually enjoy taking our exploration in that direction. But only when and if you're ready. The honesty was refreshing. I appreciate that. One last thing. He leaned forward again. Outside of our arranged times together, I have no authority over you. I won't contact you with commands or expectations. Each session begins and ends clearly, and in between, you're entirely your own. That seems ... healthy. It's essential. His expression was serious. This isn't about controlling your life, Olivia. It's about creating a space where you can safely experience surrender. I nodded, processing everything. So what happens now? Now? He checked his watch. It's late. I'll have Marcus take you home. You'll think about everything we've discussed. If you decide to proceed, contact me with a time that works for you. I'll make the arrangements. That's it. I couldn't keep the note of disappointment from my voice. He smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. Were you expecting me to pounce on you the moment we established boundaries? No, I trailed off, unsure how to articulate what I'd been expecting. Patience is part of the discipline. He stood, extending his hand to help me up. For both of us. As I placed my hand in his, he pulled me slightly closer than necessary, his voice dropping to that commanding tone that seemed to bypass my brain and go straight to my spine. But make no mistake, Olivia, when you do come back, and I believe you will, I intend to take you apart piece by piece until you understand exactly what submission means. The promise in his words left me breathless. I should go. Yes, you should. He released my hand and stepped back, the moment of intensity gone as quickly as it had appeared. I'll call Marcus. As we waited for the car in companionable silence, I realized I felt more seen, more understood by this near stranger than by people I'd known for years. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When the car arrived, Daniel walked me to the door, maintaining a respectful distance. "Good night, Olivia," he said simply. "Good night, Daniel." I slid into the back seat, heart racing with possibilities. As Marcus pulled away from the curb, I looked back to see Daniel still standing there, watching me go. The image stayed with me all the way home, this powerful man who wanted nothing more than for me to give him my power, freely and on my own terms. I would contact him tomorrow. I didn't contact him the next day, or the day after that dot. I told myself I was being cautious, taking time to process. In reality, I was terrified, not of Daniel, but of how desperately I wanted to say, "Yes, stop my apartment." It felt different somehow, as if the conversation with Daniel had altered not just me, but the spaces I inhabited. I wandered from room to room, touching familiar objects that suddenly seemed like they belonged to someone else. Someone who hadn't sat in a stranger's penthouse, discussing safe words and restraints. Earth to Olivia. Lily waved a hand in front of my face. I asked if you wanted Thai or Indian for dinner. Sorry. I blinked, pulling myself back to the present. Either is fine. She studied me, head tilted. Okay, what's going on? You've been spacey for days. Is it work? That hot guy from the gallery? I hesitated. Lily and I had been roommates for 3 years, friends for even longer, but how could I explain what I barely understood myself? Sort of, I fidgeted with my phone. I saw him again. At the charity gala. And she perched on the arm of the couch, eyes wide with interest. Details, please. We talked. He invited me back to his place. Olivia Bennett, she clapped her hands together. You dark horse, did you sleep with him? No, nothing like that. I shook my head. We just talked about... I hesitated again. About control, submission. Lily's eyebrows shot up. Like kinky stuff? It's not just about sex, I said, surprising myself with the defensiveness in my tone. It's about power dynamics. Trust. Honey, I'm not judging. She moved to sit next to me. I'm just surprised. You've always been so in control. That was the irony, wasn't it? Everyone who knew me, professionally, personally, saw me as composed, organized, self-sufficient. I was the friend who made the plans, the editor who never missed a deadline. The idea of me willingly surrendering that control seemed absurd, and yet, maybe that's why it appeals to me, I said slowly. The thought of letting go, just for a while, in a safe way. Lily nodded thoughtfully. So what's the problem? He seems interested, you're intrigued. I'm scared. The admission came out barely above a whisper. Not of him, but of how much I want it. What does that say about me? That you're human? She squeezed my hand. Look, I don't know much about this stuff, but isn't it all about consent? About choosing to give power rather than having it taken? That's what he said. I smiled slightly, remembering Daniel's words. But submission is a form of power in itself. Smart guy. She stood up. I'm ordering Thai, and I think you should text him. After dinner, I curled up in bed with my laptop, ostensibly working on an article, but really just staring at the screen. Finally, I set it aside and picked up my phone. I stared at Daniel's number for a long moment before typing. I'd been thinking about our conversation. His response came almost immediately. And? I took a deep breath and typed, I'd like to try. This weekend, if you're available. Three dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again, Saturday. 8 p.m. Wear something comfortable that makes you feel confident. No expectations beyond what you're ready for. I hesitated, then added, I'm still nervous. His response was simple, good. Nervousness means you're taking this seriously. As am I. For some reason, those words calmed me more than any reassurance could have. He understood the weight of what we were considering. The responsibility on both sides. I set my phone aside and lay back, staring at the ceiling. What was I doing? Agreeing to submit to a man I barely knew, to explore desires I'd never acknowledged. And yet, beneath the anxiety was an undercurrent of anticipation so strong it almost hurt. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly awake, truly present. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday evening found me standing once again outside Daniel's building, heart hammering against my ribs. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple black dress, fitted but not tight, with a soft fabric that made me feel both elegant and comfortable. My hair hung loose around my shoulders, my makeup minimal. The doorman nodded in recognition. Mr. Kavanaugh is expecting you, Miss Bennett. Top floor. The elevator ride seemed interminable. I checked my reflection in its mirrored walls, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from my dress, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. What was I doing here? What did I expect to happen? When the doors finally opened, Daniel was waiting. Hello, Olivia. His voice was warm, his expression pleased. He dressed casually, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that somehow looked as elegant as his suits. Hi. The word came out breathier than I intended. Come in. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter the apartment. Would you like a glass of wine? It might help with the nerves. That obvious, huh? A smile touched his lips. Your hands are shaking. I glanced down. He was right. Wine would be nice. Thank you. He gestured toward the living room. Make yourself comfortable. I'll be right back. I moved to the couch, perching on its edge rather than settling in. Everything felt heightened. The texture of the fabric beneath my fingers, the soft jazz playing in the background, the scent of something cooking. Are you hungry? Daniel asked, returning with 2 glasses of red wine. I thought we might have dinner first, give you time to relax. The consideration in the gesture touched me. It sounds perfect, actually. He handed me a glass, then took a seat in the armchair opposite, giving me space. How was your week? The normality of the question made me smile. Good. Busy. Yours? The same. He took a sip of wine. I was in Boston for 2 days, reviewing a potential investment. We fell into easy conversation about work, books, the city. Gradually, I felt myself relaxing, the tension in my shoulders easing. Daniel was a good listener, asking thoughtful questions and sharing enough of himself to keep the exchange balanced out after about 20 minutes. He set his glass aside. I think dinner's ready. I hope you like Italian. The dining area adjoined the kitchen, a beautiful space with copper pots hanging from a rack and a large island in the center. The table was already set, candles lit, a bottle of wine breathing nearby. You cooked? I couldn't hide my surprise. Did you think I'd only know how to give orders? There was amusement in his voice. I find cooking meditative. A different kind of control. He pulled out my chair, waiting until I was seated before moving to serve the meal. A simple but beautifully presented pasta dish with a side of roasted vegetables. This looks amazing, I said truthfully. Try it before you compliment the chef. But he looked pleased. The food was delicious, the wine excellent. As we ate, the conversation continued to flow naturally. It felt like a normal date, the kind I've had countless times before, though. Never with this undercurrent of anticipation. You seem more relaxed, Daniel observed as he refilled my wine glass. I am. I met his eyes. This wasn't what I expected. What did you expect? I hesitated. I don't know. Something more immediate, less normal. I told you, outside our arranged sessions, there's no power dynamic. He set the wine bottle down. And even within them, it's not about rushing or pushing. It's about creating a space where surrender feels natural, not forced. His words sent a shiver through me. When does the session begin? When you're ready, he held my gaze, and not a moment before. I took a deep breath, then a sip of wine for courage. I'm ready now. Something shifted in his expression, a subtle hardening, a focus that hadn't been there before. Finish your wine first. It wasn't a suggestion. The sudden change in his tone made my breath catch, but I obeyed, lifting the glass to my lips and emptying it slowly. Good. The approval in that single word sent heat coursing through me. Now, come with me. He stood, extending his hand. I placed mine in it, allowing him to lead me back to the living room. Instead of the couch, he guided me to stand in the center of the space. For tonight, we'll keep things simple. His voice had taken on that commanding quality I remembered from the gallery. A few basic exercises in trust and obedience. Nothing you can't handle. I nodded, my heart racing again, but differently now, with anticipation rather than anxiety. First, rule. From this moment until I say otherwise, you don't speak unless asked a direct question. Understood. Yes, I whispered. Yes, what? His eyebrow raised slightly. I hesitated, unsure what he wanted. Yes, Daniel will suffice for now, he provided. Yes, Daniel. The formality of it sent another thrill through me. Good, he circled me slowly, his gaze traveling over me in a way that was appreciative but not leering. Second rule, you don't move from where I place you unless instructed to do so. He stopped in front of me, his eyes finding mine. Last rule, and most important, if at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to stop, you use your safe word. What is it? Pine, I answered promptly. And if you say it once, you stop whatever you're doing. Twice, you untie anything that needs untying. 3 times, you take me home. He nodded, satisfied. Perfect. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. Now, close your eyes. I obeyed, plunging myself into darkness. Immediately, my other senses heightened. The sound of his breathing, the faint scent of his cologne, the awareness of his presence circling me again. Keep them closed, he instructed. No matter what happens until I tell you otherwise. Yes. Daniel, I murmured. The first touch made me jump, his fingers brushing lightly across my collarbone. But I kept my eyes closed, my body still. Very good, he said softly. Now we begin. With my eyes closed, every sense was heightened to an almost painful degree. I could track Daniel's movements by the subtle shift of air, the barely audible sound of his breathing. He was circling me again, I realized, a predator assessing his prey. Remain still, he reminded me as his fingers trailed lightly across my shoulders from behind. Suppressed a shiver, but couldn't hide the goosebumps that rose in the wake of his touch. His low chuckle told me he'd noticed. Your body is remarkably honest, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. Even when you try to control it. His hand settled on my shoulders, firm but gentle. I'm going to guide you. Step where I direct you, nothing more. With slight pressure from his hands, he moved me forward 3 steps, then turned me to the right. The disorientation of moving blindly made me instinctively reach for him. No, he said sharply, arms at your sides until I say otherwise. Sorry, I whispered, immediately returning to position. What's the first rule, Olivia? I swallowed. Don't speak unless asked a direct question. And was that a direct question? No, Daniel. Since this is your first infraction, I'll be lenient. His voice softened slightly, but remember, discipline is essential to this dynamic. The gentle rebuke sent an unexpected pulse of heat through me. Something about disappointing him felt worse than I'd anticipated. He continued guiding me through the space, turning me, moving me forward and back. Without sight, I had no choice but to trust his direction completely. Gradually, I surrendered to the experience, letting my body follow his commands without hesitation. Stop, he said finally. You may open your eyes. I blinked against the light, disoriented. We were in a different room. His bedroom, I realized with a jolt. The space was simply furnished with a large bed, nightstands, and a comfortable-looking chair in the corner. The lighting was dim, casting soft shadows. You did well, he said, standing before me. How do you feel? I considered the question, present, aware. Good. He gestured toward the bed. Sit down. I moved to obey, perching on the edge of the mattress. He remained standing, looking down at me with those intense eyes. I'm going to touch you now, he said matter-of-factly. Nothing inappropriate, but I want you to become accustomed to my hands on you. If anything feels uncomfortable, use your safe word. Otherwise, remain silent and still. Understood? Yes, Daniel. He sat beside me, close but not touching. Looked straight ahead. I fixed my gaze on the wall opposite, my breath quickening as he reached up to brush my hair away from my neck. His fingers were warm as they traced the line of my throat, down to my collarbone, then back up to cup my jaw. Turn your head toward me, he instructed. I obeyed, meeting his eyes. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, a touch so intimate it made me gasp softly. He soothed, just feel. His hands moved down to my wrists, circling them loosely. His thumbs pressed gently against my pulse points, which were racing betrayingly fast. Your heart is pounding, he observed. Are you afraid? No, I answered. Truthfully, excited then? It wasn't a question. He released my wrists and stood, moving behind me. I felt the mattress dip as he knelt there, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders again. I'm going to blindfold you, he said. Is that acceptable? Yes, I whispered. Yes, what? Yes, Daniel. I felt something soft, silk, perhaps, being tied gently around my eyes. The darkness was more complete than when I'd simply closed my eyes, more disorienting. Now, his voice came from directly behind me, his breath stirring my hair. I want you to lie back. I hesitated, suddenly acutely aware of our position, of the bed beneath us. Trust me, Oyeri, he said softly. I won't take advantage. This is about sensation, not sex. Not yet. Something in his voice, a sincerity that cut through the dominant tone, reassured me. I leaned back slowly until I felt his chest behind me, solid and warm. He guided me to lie fully back, my head resting against his shoulder, my body stretched out before him. Arms at your sides, he instructed, palms up. I complied, feeling oddly vulnerable in this position, blindfolded, supine, completely at his mercy. My breath came faster. He soothed again, one hand stroking my hair. I've got you. You're safe. His other hand traced a path down my arm, so lightly I could barely feel it. Goosebumps followed his touch. He repeated the motion on my other arm, then along my collarbone, down the center of my body, never touching anywhere inappropriate, but making me acutely aware of every inch of skin. Breathe deeply, he instructed. Focus on my touch. Nothing else exists right now. I tried to obey, focusing on the sensation of his fingers trailing patterns across my skin. Without sight, each touch was magnified, electric. I felt myself melting into the mattress, into his guidance. Good girl, he murmured, and the praise sent a shock of pleasure through me, more intense than any physical touch. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. I had no idea how long we remained like that, him touching, me receiving. All I knew was the growing sense of peace, of surrender. Finally, his touches slowed, then stopped. I'm going to remove the blindfold now, he said softly. When he did, I blinked up at him, feeling oddly dazed. He was looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, satisfaction mixed with something deeper. How do you feel? He asked, helping me to sit up. I took a moment to assess. Calm, almost. Floating, he nodded, pleased. That's called subspace, a mild version of it, at least. It's a meditative state that can come with surrender. It's nice, I murmured, still feeling slightly disconnected from reality. It can be much deeper, he said, a promise in his voice. But we're taking things slowly, building trust. He moved to sit beside me, taking my hand in his. You did beautifully tonight, Olivia. Followed instructions perfectly, trusted me completely. The praise made me glow. Thank you. Our session is ending now, he said formally. The rules no longer apply. You can speak freely, move as you wish. I nodded, feeling myself gradually returning to normal awareness. That was not what I expected. What did you expect? Curiosity colored his tone. Something more sexual, I guess. I felt myself blush. This was so psychological. That's where it begins. He squeezed my hand. The physical aspect follows naturally once the mental connection is established. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then he asked, would you like to stay for a while? Watch a movie, perhaps? Or would you prefer to go home and process? The consideration in the question touched me. I should probably go home. Process, like you said. Of course, he stood, offering his hand to help me up. I'll call Marcus. As we waited for the car, Daniel kept a respectful distance, the dynamic between us shifting back to something more conventional. Yet I could still feel the echo of his control, of my surrender, humming beneath my skin. Same time next week? He asked as the car arrived. I nodded, suddenly shy. I'd like that. He stepped forward then, closing the distance between us. His hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing across my lower lip, just as it had during our session. But this touch felt different, a request rather than a command. May I kiss you goodnight, Olivia? My heart skipped. Yes. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. When his lips met mine, the kiss was gentle, restrained, a promise of things to come rather than a demand. He pulled back after just a moment, his eyes dark. Good night. Good night, Daniel, I whispered, still feeling the imprint of his lips on mine. As Marcus drove me home, I touched my fingers to my mouth, remembering the kiss. It had been sweet, almost chaste, nothing like the dominant man who had commanded me to kneel. Yet somehow that kiss had affected me more deeply than any of the night's more explicit power exchanges. Because in that moment, he had asked rather than told, and I had chosen to say yes. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm, my regular life during the week, then Saturday evenings with Daniel. Each session pushed slightly further than the last, a careful escalation that left me craving more while respecting my boundaries. The third Saturday began like the others, dinner, conversation, then a subtle shift in Daniel's demeanor that signaled the start of our session. But tonight felt different. There was an intensity in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Tonight we're going to try something new, he said as we stood in the center of his living room. Are you ready for that? Yes, Daniel. The response came easily now, almost automatically. He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Go into the bedroom. On the bed, you'll find a box. Open it, but don't touch what's inside. Just look, then come back here. Curious, I followed his instructions. The box on the bed was simple, black, with no markings. I lifted the lid and felt my breath catch. Inside, resting on black velvet, was a length of deep red silk rope. Coiled neatly beside a matching blindfold. My heart raced as I returned to the living room, where Daniel waited patiently. What did you see? He asked, though he knew perfectly well. Rope, I said, my voice slightly unsteady, and a blindfold. And how did that make you feel? I hesitated, then remembered our agreement. Complete honesty, always. Nervous, excited. A slight smile curved his lips. Good. Before we begin, I want to explain exactly what I have planned. I'm going to bind your wrists, very simply. Nothing elaborate or restrictive. You could free yourself if needed. It's symbolic more than functional. The matter-of-fact explanation calmed me somewhat. Okay, the blindfold you're familiar with already? He stepped closer. This is about deepening your trust, increasing your surrender. If at any point it becomes too much, pine, I finished for him. Exactly. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Are you comfortable proceeding? I nodded. Yes, Daniel. Then go back to the bedroom and wait for me by the bed. Keep your eyes down until I arrive. I obeyed, heart pounding. The anticipation was almost unbearable as I stood there, eyes lowered, listening for his footsteps. When he finally entered, I fought the urge to look up. You're learning patience, he observed, approval evident in his tone. Look at me. I raised my eyes to find him standing before me, the rope in his hands. Undress to your underwear, he instructed. We'd never gone this far before. I hesitated, only briefly before reaching for the zipper of my dress, letting it fall to the floor. Standing before him in just my black lace bra and matching underwear, I felt vulnerable yet empowered by the appreciation in his gaze. Beautiful, he murmured. Arms out in front of you, wrists together. I complied, watching as he unwound the rope. His movements were precise, practiced as he began wrapping the silk around my wrists. The material was cool and smooth against my skin. Not too tight, he asked, securing the final knot. No, Daniel, good. He guided me to sit on the edge of the bed, then reached for the blindfold. Close your eyes. Darkness enveloped me as he tied the silk around my head. Without sight, I was acutely aware of the binding around my wrists, the vulnerability of my state of undress. Lie back, he instructed. I reclined slowly until I felt the mattress beneath me. He guided my bound wrists above my head. Keep them there, he commanded. Don't move them, no matter what happens next. Understood? Yes, Daniel. I felt the mattress shift as he moved beside me. Then his fingers were tracing patterns across my skin, my arms, my shoulders, down to the edge of my bra. Each touch was light, teasing, raising goosebumps in its wake. You're responding beautifully, he murmured, so sensitive to my touch. His fingers trailed down my stomach, making the muscles there jump. He chuckled softly, the sound sending another shiver through me. Control, he said, his voice low and mesmerizing. That's what this is about. Not my control over you, but your control over yourself. Keeping your wrists where I place them, staying still when you want to move, surrendering to sensation. His hand moved to my hip, then slowly down my thigh. I bit my lip, fighting the urge to shift toward his touch. Good girl, he praised, noting my restraint. Now, I'm going to touch you more intimately. If you want me to stop at any point, fine. I whispered, though stopping was the last thing I wanted. His hand moved between my thighs, over my underwear, the pressure light but unmistakable. A small sound escaped me, half gasp, half moan. You can make noise, he allowed. In fact, I want to hear you. But keep those wrists exactly where they are. What followed was exquisite torture, his hands exploring my body, never quite giving enough pressure where I most wanted it, keeping me balanced on the edge of pleasure without release. All while I struggled to keep my bound wrists above my head, fighting every instinct to reach for him. Please, I finally gasped, breaking the no-speaking rule. He stilled his hand. Please what? I need. I couldn't articulate what I needed, only that the ache inside me was becoming unbearable. Not yet. His voice was firm but gentle. Tonight is about control, remember? Learning to exist in the state of wanting. His touch resumed, lighter now, more teasing. I whimpered in frustration but didn't protest further. There was something intoxicating about this denial, this test of my obedience. Time lost all meaning. There was only sensation, only the struggle. To keep my wrists where he'd placed them while his hands and occasionally his lips moved across my skin. Finally, when I was trembling with need, he stopped. You've done so well, he murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I'm going to untie you now. Gentle fingers removed the blindfold first. I blinked up at him, feeling dazed. Then he untied my wrists, massaging them lightly. How do you feel? He asked, his eyes studying mine. Overwhelmed, I admitted, but in a good way. He smiled, brushing hair from my face. You were perfect. Following instructions, maintaining control even when it was difficult. His praise washed over me, almost as satisfying as physical release would have been. Almost. Rest here for a moment, he said, rising from the bed. I'll get you some water. As he left the room, I curled onto my side, still processing what had happened. The vulnerability, the trust, the intoxicating surrender. It was unlike anything I'd experienced before. And I wanted more. The following Wednesday, everything fell apart. I'd been working on a major book launch, a memoir by a controversial political figure that had the publishing world buzzing. As the newest editor on the team, I'd been assigned the thankless task of coordinating with the author's publicist, a woman who seemed to exist solely to make my life difficult. I don't care what your production schedule says, she snapped over the phone. The senator needs those changes incorporated by Friday, all of them. That's impossible, I replied, struggling to keep my voice level. The book goes to print on Monday. We've already made the last round of edits. Figure it out. She hung up without another word. I stared at the phone, fury and panic rising in equal measure. The changes she wanted were substantial, nearly a full chapter rewritten to soften some of the more inflammatory claims. It would require overnight work from multiple departments, approval chains that typically took days, and my boss was out of town until Thursday dot by 5 o'clock. I managed to cobble together a tentative plan, bullying and pleading with various department heads until they reluctantly agreed to the impossible timeline. My head pounded, my jaw ached from clenching it, and my inbox was overflowing with passive-aggressive emails questioning my competence. When my phone chimed with a text, I nearly threw it across the room. Thinking of you, looking forward to Saturday, D. Daniel. In the chaos of the day, I'd almost forgotten our arrangement. The contrast between the controlled, peaceful space he created and the disaster currently consuming my professional life was jarring. I stared at his message, unsure how to respond. Part of me craved the release his dominance provided, the freedom of surrendering control. But another part, the part frantically trying to hold my career together, recoiled at the thought of submission. I didn't reply. The next 2 days were a blur of emergency meetings, frantic revisions, and barely contained panic. I slept at the office on Thursday night, curled uncomfortably on the small couch in the break room, waking every hour to check emails. By Friday afternoon, when the final changes were sent to the printer, I was running on caffeine and adrenaline alone. My phone chimed again as I was packing up my desk. Are we still on for tomorrow? Should I send Marcus? Dee stared at the message, a strange resentment building in my chest. How nice it must be to live in Daniel's world, where everything happened according to plan, where control was a game rather than a necessity. He had no idea what my week had been like, the pressure I'd been under, the constant feeling that everything was about to collapse. Before I could reconsider, I typed, "Need to cancel." Work crisis. His response came almost immediately. I understand. Take care of yourself. Let me know when things settle down. The reasonable response only irritated me further. I shoved my phone into my bag and left the office, too exhausted to examine why I was angry at a man who'd done nothing wrong. Saturday morning, I woke to my apartment phone ringing. Gradually, I answered to hear the doorman's voice. "Ms. Bennett, there's a delivery for you." 10 minutes later, I was staring at an elegant gift basket containing high-end bath products, gourmet chocolates, and a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note for stress relief. No expectations, no pressure, just thinking of you. The thoughtfulness of the gesture should have touched me. Instead, it fueled the irrational anger still simmering beneath my exhaustion. Who was he to presume he knew what I needed? To think some fancy soaps could fix the week I'd had? I grabbed my phone and typed, "I don't need gifts. I need space." As soon as I sent it, I regretted the harshness. But I was too tired, too strung out to take it back. I set my phone to do not disturb and crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over my head. When I finally emerged 12 hours later, there was a single message waiting. "You have it. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." The calm understanding in those words finally broke through my irrational anger. I sat on the edge of my bed, reading and rereading the message, trying to understand my own reaction. Why was I pushing away the one person who seemed to truly see me, who created a space where I could let go of the very control that was currently crushing me? The truth hit me with uncomfortable clarity. I was scared. Not of Daniel or what we did together, but of how quickly he'd become important to me. Of how much I'd come to crave our time together. Of how vulnerable I felt, not just during our sessions, but in the growing emotional connection between us. Control had always been my shield, my way of navigating a chaotic world. Daniel had shown me the freedom in surrendering that control, but only in carefully defined circumstances. When my professional life had spiraled, I clung to control even more fiercely, rejecting anything that threatened it, including him. I picked up my phone, staring at the screen. I should apologize, explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could I articulate something I was only beginning to understand myself? In the end, I simply wrote, "I'm sorry, can we talk?" His response came within minutes. "My door is always open to you." Tonight, I hesitated, then typed, "Yes, 8 p.m. I'll be waiting." As I set the phone down, I realized my hands were trembling. Tonight wouldn't be about dominance and submission, about ropes or blindfolds. It would be about something far more frightening: honesty, vulnerability outside the safety of our structured sessions. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but I knew I couldn't run from it any longer. Daniel opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been waiting just on the other side. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes searched mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. "Come in," he said simply, stepping aside. I entered, noticing immediately that the apartment felt different. No music playing, no candles lit, just the soft glow of lamps and the city lights visible through the windows. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked, maintaining a careful distance. "Water, please." He moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 glasses. I accepted mine gratefully, using the moment to gather my thoughts. "I'm sorry," I began, the words feeling inadequate, "for how I responded to your gift, for pushing you away." He nodded, his expression softening slightly. "I understand more than you might think, Olivia. Pressure builds. We all have breaking points. It wasn't just work," I admitted, moving to sit on the couch, though that was part of it. He took a seat in the armchair opposite, giving me space. "Tell me, where to begin?" I stared down at my water glass, watching the light refract through it. I've always been the responsible one, the organized one, the one who holds everything together, at work, with friends and relationships. Control isn't just something I cling to, it's who I am, or who you believe you need to be, he suggested quietly. The observation hit closer to home than I cared to admit. Maybe, but when everything started falling apart at work, I felt exposed, like I was failing at the one thing I'm supposed to be good at. And our arrangement became complicated in that context, he supplied. Yes, I looked up at him, grateful for his understanding. When I'm with you, surrendering control feels liberating. But when I was already losing control elsewhere, it felt threatening, he finished. Like you couldn't afford to let go anywhere else? Exactly. I set my glass down, twisting my hands together. But it was more than that. I think I was also scared of how important our sessions have become to me, how much I look forward to them, to being with you. The admission hung between us, more intimate somehow than any of our physical encounters had been. Daniel was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. What we do together, the dominance, the submission, it's not just physical, Olivia. There's an emotional component that's impossible to avoid. Trust requires vulnerability, and vulnerability creates connection. I know, my voice was barely above a whisper. That's what scares me. He leaned forward, his eyes intent on mine. "May I tell you something about myself? Something I don't share with many people?" I nodded, surprised by the offer. "Control has always been my refuge, too." He spoke carefully, as if weighing each word. "My father was unpredictable, volatile. I never knew which version of him would come home each night. By the time I was 10, I'd learned to read the smallest signs, the sound of his key in the lock, the weight of his footsteps, to prepare myself. I hadn't expected this personal revelation. The image of a young Daniel, vigilant and wary, made my heart ache. I promised myself that when I grew up, I would never be at the mercy of anyone else's moods. I would create order, predictability. A sad smile touched his lips. It took years of therapy to understand that my need for control wasn't just a preference. It was a response to chaos, to fear. Is that why this dynamic appeals to you? I asked hesitantly, being the one in control, partly. He nodded. But it's more complex than that. Dominance isn't about controlling another person, Olivia. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe, the submissive to surrender, the dominant to guide. I find as much freedom in that role as you do in yours. His honesty was disarming. For the first time, I saw beyond the confident, commanding presence to the man beneath. Someone with his own vulnerabilities, his own reasons for the path he'd chosen. I never thought of it that way, I admitted. That you might be finding freedom too. Every time you trust me enough to surrender, you give me a gift. His voice softened. The responsibility of that trust is profound, sacred even. Something shifted between us in that moment, a deepening, a new layer of understanding. This wasn't just about physical dominance and submission. It was about two people who had found different sides of the same coin, each giving the other what they most needed. "I'd like to try something different tonight," Daniel said after a moment. "If you're willing, what did you have in mind?" I asked, curious, a role reversal of sorts. He held my gaze steadily. "I want you to tell me what you need right now. Not what you think I expect, not what fits our usual dynamic. Just what you, Olivia, need in this moment." The question caught me off guard. What did I need? After a week of crisis, of forced strength, of holding everything together, I hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. I need to be held, just held. Nothing sexual, nothing about dominance or submission. I just need to feel safe. Instead of responding verbally, Daniel rose from his chair and moved to sit beside me on the couch. Slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, he wrapped his arms around me, drawing me against his chest. I stiffened momentarily, then melted into his embrace. His heartbeat was steady under my ear, his arms firm around me. No demands, no expectations, just warmth and safety and connection. "Like this?" he murmured into my ear. "Yes," I whispered, "just like this." We stayed that way for a long time, neither speaking nor moving. The simple human contact was more healing than any scene could have been, more intimate in its way than any of our previous encounters. Eventually, I pulled back slightly to look at him. "Thank you for understanding, for not pushing. This is still part of our dynamic, Olivia." His fingers brushed gently through my hair, recognizing what you need when you need it. Sometimes that's discipline and structure. Sometimes it's gentleness. I rested my head on his shoulder again, letting his words sink in. Perhaps true submission wasn't just about following commands or surrendering to sensation. Perhaps it was also about being honest about my needs, trusting him to meet me where I was. And perhaps true dominance wasn't about control at all, but about creating space for that honesty to flourish. "Stay tonight," he said softly, "just to sleep. I think we both could use the rest." "Yes," I agreed, the word coming easily. "I'd like that." As he led me to his bedroom, there was none of the charged anticipation of our previous encounters. Instead, there was something quieter, deeper, a trust that transcended the roles we'd established. That night, falling asleep in his arms, I realized we had crossed an invisible threshold. What had begun as an exploration of power and surrender was becoming something neither of us had anticipated. Something that scared me and thrilled me in equal measure. Over the next few weeks, our relationship evolved. The sessions continued, each one pushing slightly further than the last. But something had fundamentally changed between us. The rigid lines between our time together and the rest of life began to blur. We shared meals that weren't preludes to scenes, had conversations that had nothing to do with power dynamics. "You seem different," Lily commented one evening as we shared takeout on our tiny balcony. "Calmer, happier." I smiled, poking at my pad thai. "I feel different. Is it still just about the dominance thing?" She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. "Or is it more now? Both, I think." I wasn't sure how to explain that the dynamic and the emotional connection had become inseparable. "It's complicated. Complicated is fine as long as it's good for you." She studied me with genuine concern. "Is it good for you?" I thought about the question seriously. "Yes, he sees me in a way no one else ever has. Not just the put-together, professional version one show the world, but all of me, the part that sometimes wants to surrender, to be vulnerable. Just be careful." She squeezed my hand. "These power dynamics can get intense." "We're taking it slowly," I assured her, though. The truth was more nuanced. Physically, we were indeed progressing cautiously. Emotionally, we were diving headlong into uncharted waters. Saturday night found me once again at Daniel's door. He greeted me with a kiss that lingered, his hand cupping my face with a gentleness that belied the strength I knew he possessed. "I've been thinking about tonight all week," he murmured against my lips. "Me too," I admitted. Dinner was simple but delicious. Pasta he'd made himself, a bottle of excellent red wine. We talked about our weeks, about books we'd read, about nothing and everything. If not for the undercurrent of anticipation, It might have been any couple's date night when he finally set his wine glass aside and fixed me with that intent gaze. My pulse quickened in Pavlovian response. "Tonight will be different," he said, his voice taking on that commanding edge I'd come to crave. "More intense than what we've done before. Are you ready for that?" "Yes, Daniel." The response came automatically now, a surrender in 3 syllables. He nodded, satisfied. "Go to the bedroom. Undress completely and kneel at the foot of the bed, eyes down. Wait for me there." The instruction sent a jolt of both anxiety and excitement through me. We'd never gone this far before. I'd always retained some clothing, some small barrier. This would be total vulnerability. I moved to obey, my heart pounding as I entered his bedroom. Slowly, I removed each piece of clothing, folding them neatly on the chair in the corner. Naked, I knelt as instructed, eyes downcast, waiting. Minutes stretched, my awareness heightening with each passing moment. I could hear the faint sounds of Daniel moving in the other room, the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. My own quickened breathing. When he finally entered, I kept my gaze lowered as instructed, though every instinct urged me to look. Up, I could see only his feet as he circled me, assessing. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Look at me, Olivia." I raised my eyes to find him standing before me, still fully dressed, but with his sleeves rolled up, a detail that always signaled his transition into dominance. In his hands was the now familiar red silk rope. "Tonight is about complete surrender," he said, his voice low and intense. "No barriers, nothing held back. Do you consent to that?" "Yes, Daniel." My voice was steady despite the flutter in my stomach. "Stand." I rose, fighting the urge to cover myself. His eyes traveled over me appreciatively but clinically, as if assessing a work of art. "Arms behind your back." I complied, clasping my hands together at the small of my back. He moved behind me, and I felt the cool silk of the rope against my skin as he began binding my wrists with practiced efficiency. "Too tight?" he asked when he'd finished. I tested the bonds. "No, Daniel, good." He guided me to the bed, positioning me in the center. "Lie back." I obeyed, the position forcing my back to arch slightly with my bound arms beneath me. He produced a second length of rope, using it to bind my ankles together with the same careful precision. "Still comfortable?" He checked. "Yes." He reached for the blindfold next, securing it over my eyes with gentle hands. Then came the most vulnerable moment of all. His weight on the mattress beside me, his hand resting lightly on my stomach. "From this moment until I say otherwise, your body belongs to me," he said, his voice taking on a deeper resonance. "To touch, to taste, to bring to the edge of pleasure and beyond. Your only job is to feel, to surrender to whatever sensations I choose to give you." A shiver ran through me at his words, at the complete vulnerability of my position, bound, blindfolded, naked, utterly at his mercy. "If at any point you need to pause or stop, pine," I whispered. "Good girl." What followed was a symphony of sensation, his hands exploring every inch of my skin, sometimes featherlight, sometimes with firm pressure. His lips following the path, his fingers blazed, lingering in places that made me gasp and arch against my bonds. Without sight, every touch was magnified, unexpected. I lost all sense of time, all awareness beyond the points where his skin met mine. When his mouth closed over my breast, I cried out, the sound seemingly pulled from somewhere deep inside me. "Yes," he encouraged, his breath hot against my sensitive skin. "Let me hear you. No holding back, remember?" His hands moved lower, across my stomach, down to my thighs. When he finally touched me where I most needed it, I moaned, unable to contain the sound. "So responsive," he murmured appreciatively. "So perfectly surrendered." His fingers moved with maddening precision, building a tension that coiled tighter and tighter inside me. Just when I thought I couldn't bear any more, he would slow or change his rhythm, keeping me balanced on the knife's edge of release. "Please." I gasped finally, straining against the ropes. "Please what, Olivia?" His voice was controlled, though I could hear the desire underneath. "Tell me exactly what you want." "I want ... The words caught in my throat, not from embarrassment, but from the overwhelming vulnerability of the request. "Say it," he commanded. "No barriers, remember?" I want you inside me, I managed. Please, Daniel. The mattress shifted as he moved. I heard the rustle of clothing being removed, then felt his weight above me, his skin finally against mine, with nothing between us. Are you sure? He asked, his voice gentle despite the dominant role. Yes, I breathed. Yes. When he finally entered me, the sensation was overwhelming, pleasure mixed with a profound emotional connection that brought tears to my eyes beneath the blindfold. He moved slowly at first, with exquisite control, each thrust deliberate and measured. You're mine, he whispered against my ear. In this moment, completely mine. Yes, I agreed, surrendering to the truth of it. Yours. As our rhythm intensified, I felt myself spiraling toward the edge, all conscious thought dissolving into pure sensation. When release finally came, it crashed through me with an intensity that bordered on spiritual, a complete letting go, a perfect surrender. Daniel followed moments later, his controlled facade finally breaking as he shuddered above me. For a long moment, we remained joined, both breathing heavily in the aftermath of something that had transcended the physical. Gently, he removed the blindfold first, allowing me to blink up at him in the soft light. The vulnerability in his eyes matched my own. This had changed something for both of us. You're crying, he observed softly, brushing a tear from my cheek. So are you, I whispered back, seeing the moisture in his eyes. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression I'd rarely seen. So I am. After that night, something shifted between us again. The carefully maintained boundaries between Daniel the dominant and Daniel the man I was growing to care for blurred even further. We still had our sessions, but they were now interwoven with quieter moments, conversations that stretched late into the night, shared breakfasts, walks through the city on Sunday mornings. I began leaving things at his apartment, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, a favorite book, small anchors in his space that marked my growing presence in his life. One rainy Tuesday evening, he called unexpectedly. Have dinner with me tomorrow, he said without preamble. There's something I want to show you. Curiosity piqued, I agreed. The following night, Marcus picked me up from work, driving not to Daniel's apartment, but to a small, exclusive restaurant tucked away in the West Village. Daniel was waiting at a corner table, rising as I approached. He looked different somehow. Still impeccably dressed, but with a subtle tension in his shoulders and unusual hesitancy in his eyes. You look beautiful, he said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. Thank you. I studied him as we sat. Is everything all right? You seem nervous. A smile flickered across his face. Perceptive as always. He reached for his water glass. I am a bit. I have something important to discuss with you. Alarm fluttered in my chest. That sounds ominous. It's not. He reached across the table to take my hand. At least, I hope you won't find it so. Before he could continue, the waiter arrived to take our orders. Daniel handled the interaction with his usual easy charm, but I could still sense the underlying tension. Once we were alone again, he took a deep breath. I've been offered an opportunity, a significant investment project in London. If I take it, I'd need to be there for at least 3 months, possibly longer. My heart sank. I see. I'd like you to consider coming with me, he said, watching my reaction carefully, not for the entire time necessarily. I know you have your career, your life here, but perhaps for part of it. The offer took me by surprise. Daniel, I don't know what to say. You don't need to answer now. Just think about it. He squeezed my hand. But before you do, there's something else you should know. Something about me that I haven't shared yet. The serious tone in his voice made me sit up straighter. What is it? He released my hand, leaning back slightly. My interest in dominance and submission isn't casual, Olivia. It's fundamental to who I am, to how I connect intimately. Before you consider whether our relationship has a future, you need to understand that. I think I already do, I said carefully. He shook his head. There's more. My last serious relationship ended because of it. She thought she could accept this part of me, even found it exciting initially. But eventually, she began to resent it, to see it as a barrier to genuine connection rather than an expression of it. I could hear the old hurt in his voice. What happened? She gave me an ultimatum. Give up the dynamic or give up her? His expression was carefully controlled. I chose to be true to myself, even though it meant losing her. I'm sorry, I said softly. That must have been painful. It was. He met my eyes directly, which is why I'm telling you this now before we go any further. If you come to London with me, if we continue this relationship, you need to understand that this isn't a phase or an experiment for me. It's how I express intimacy, how I connect. Most deeply, I considered his words carefully. Are you asking if I can accept that part of you? Yes. The single word held a vulnerability I rarely heard from him. And more than that, if you can find fulfillment in it long term, if it resonates with something essential in you as well. The question deserved serious consideration. Was this dynamic something I could embrace not just as an exciting exploration, but as a fundamental aspect of our connection? Was my submission a temporary fascination or a genuine expression of something in my nature? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. What we've shared has been transformative for me. I've discovered parts of myself I never knew existed, but I'm still understanding what that means. He nodded, accepting my uncertainty. That's fair. I wouldn't expect you to have all the answers yet. We're still discovering each other. But I do know one thing, I continued, reaching for his hand again. I'm not afraid of this aspect of you or of myself. I'm curious. I'm engaged. I'm drawn to it in ways I can't fully articulate yet. Relief softness features. That's enough for now. Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As we ate, I found myself contemplating the prospect of London, of taking this relationship beyond the carefully bounded experience it had been so far. Tell me about the project, I said finally. The one in London. He explained it. Something involving sustainable technology, venture capital, potential partnerships with European firms. I listened, watching how his eyes lit up when he discussed the possibilities, the challenges. You're excited about it, I observed. I am. He smiled. It's an opportunity to make a meaningful impact, not just a profitable one. When would you leave? 3 weeks from now, if I accept. So soon. The thought of him gone, of our Saturday night suspended, created an emptiness I wasn't prepared for. I have vacation time I haven't used, I said slowly. Not 3 months worth, but maybe 2 weeks. Possibly 3 if I negotiate. Hope flickered in his eyes. You'd consider it then? I'm not making any promises, I cautioned. But yes, I'd consider visiting. Seeing if we can translate what we have here to somewhere else. He reached across the table again, taking my hand. Thank you. For what? I haven't agreed to anything yet. For considering it, for not dismissing the possibility outright. His thumb traced circles on my palm. For being open to exploring what this could become. After dinner, we walked through the rain-slicked streets, his arm around my waist, neither of us speaking much. The weight of possibility hung between us, the potential evolution of what had begun as a carefully negotiated arrangement into something deeper, more complex. When we reached his apartment, there was none of the usual preparation for a session, no shift into our established roles. Instead, we simply came together with an urgency born of the evening's revelations, of the countdown now hanging over us. Later, lying in the darkness of his bedroom, I traced patterns on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath. My fingers. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice low in the darkness. That I'm not ready for this to end, I admitted. Whatever this is. He turned to face me, his expression serious, even in the dim light. It doesn't have to end, Olivia. Not if we don't want it to. But London is just a place, a temporary assignment. His hand came up to cup my face. What we're building here is something else entirely. And what exactly are we building? I asked, the question that had been circling in my mind for weeks. Finally finding voice, he was quiet for a long moment, considering something I've never had before. Something beyond the roles we play, beyond dominant and submissive. Though those aspects will always be part of it. For me too, I whispered, the admission feeling like a step across some invisible threshold. I don't think I could go back to ordinary connection now, not after experiencing this. His smile in the darkness was beautiful, relieved, joyful, a rare, unguarded moment. Then we'll find our way forward, together. As I drifted toward sleep in his arms, I realized that what had begun as an exploration of power had become something far more powerful and frightening than I could have imagined. I was falling in love with Daniel Kavanaugh, not despite the dynamic between us, but because of it, because of how completely he saw me, how perfectly he understood the parts of myself I'd always kept hidden. The question now was whether I was brave enough to follow that feeling wherever it might lead, even across an ocean. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Daniel confirmed his London project, setting things in motion with his typical efficiency. I negotiated with my boss, managing to secure 3 weeks of leave, 2 weeks of vacation plus 1 week working remotely. "You're really doing this," Lily said, watching me pack my suitcase the night before my flight, "following a guy you've known for what, 3 months? To another country?" "When you put it that way, it sounds insane," I admitted, carefully folding a dress I'd bought specifically for London. "Is it insane?" She perched on the edge of my bed. "I mean, you barely knew him, and now you're rearranging your life. "I'm taking 3 weeks, Lily, not moving permanently." But her concern had touched a nerve. Was I being reckless? Rushing into something I didn't fully understand? "I just worry," she said, softer now. "This whole dominance thing, are you sure it's healthy?" I set down the sweater I was folding, giving her my full attention. "It's not what people think. It's not about him controlling me or forcing me to do things. It's about trust, vulnerability, creating a space where I can let go completely, knowing I'm safe." "And you feel safe with him, truly?" "I do." The certainty in my voice surprised even me, more than I felt with anyone. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, then I'm happy for you. Just Be careful, all right? Keep checking in with yourself. Make sure this is still what you want." "I promise," I hugged her, grateful for her concern. "And it's only 3 weeks? If it doesn't work out, I'll come home early with some great London souvenirs and a good story." But as I finished packing, I knew it wasn't that simple. This trip wasn't just a romantic getaway. It was a test of whether what Daniel and I had built could exist outside the carefully controlled environment of his New York apartment. Whether our connection was real or just an elaborate fantasy we'd constructed together. The following evening, I found myself stepping out of a black cab onto a rain-misted London street. Daniel had arrived 3 days earlier to set up the apartment his firm had leased, a renovated Victorian in South Kensington with high ceilings and tall windows overlooking a private garden. He opened the door before I could knock. Just as he had that night, I'd come to apologize. But this time, instead of careful distance, he pulled me into his arms the moment I crossed the threshold. "You're here," he murmured against my hair. "I kept expecting you to change your mind." "I almost did," I admitted, breathing in his familiar scent about a dozen times. He drew back to study my face. "And yet here you are. Here I am." He took my suitcase, leading me through the apartment, a beautiful space with a blend of modern furniture and original Victorian details. Large windows overlooked a rainy London evening, the lights of the city glimmering through the drizzle. "It's beautiful," I said, moving to the window. "Different from your place in New York." "The firm chose it." He came to stand beside me. "But I like it, especially now that you're here." That night was about reconnection, a simple dinner, conversation, the gentle reclaiming of physical intimacy after our brief separation. There was no session, no dominance or submission, just the quiet pleasure of being together again. Next morning, I woke to find Daniel already up, dressed in running clothes, his hair damp from the shower. "Good morning," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Sleep well?" I stretched, still half asleep. "What time is it?" "Just after 7. I've been for a run, checked in with New York." He brushed hair from my face. "I have meetings until 3, but after that, I'm all yours. Thought we might explore the neighborhood, find somewhere for dinner." "Sounds perfect." I caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. "Very domestic. Is that a bad thing?" There was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "No," I assured him. "Just different, new territory for us." He nodded, understanding my meaning. Tonight, after dinner, I thought we might establish some familiar territory as well. The implication sent a pleasant shiver through me. I'd like that. After he left for his meetings, I spent the day settling in, unpacking, exploring the apartment, then venturing out to the nearby shops and cafes. London in early autumn was beautiful, the parks turning golden, the air crisp with the promise of cooler weather to come. By the time Daniel returned, I'd showered and changed into a simple blue dress I knew he liked. His eyes darkened appreciatively when he saw me. "You look lovely." He kissed me briefly. "Give me 20 minutes to shower and change." We walked to a local restaurant he'd heard about from colleagues, a small, intimate place with excellent food and a wine list that impressed even Daniel, who was something of a connoisseur. The conversation flowed easily, touching on his meetings, my exploration of the neighborhood, plans for the days ahead. It felt normal, comfortable, the kind of evening any couple might share. Yet beneath the ordinary interaction ran that current of anticipation, of knowing what awaited us when we returned to the apartment. As we walked home, his hand found the small of my back, that gesture I'd come to associate with his subtle assertion of control. My pulse quickened in response. "Are you nervous?" he asked quietly as we approached the apartment. "A little," I admitted. "It feels different here. We can wait, if you prefer." "There's no rush," I shook my head. "No, I want this. I've been thinking about it all day." Once inside, he turned to me, his expression shifting to that focused intensity I knew so well. "Then go to the bedroom, remove your dress and underwear, kneel at the foot of the bed and wait for me." The familiar command centered me immediately, drawing me back into our established dynamic. I moved to obey, my earlier nervousness transforming into anticipation. The bedroom was dimly lit, shadows playing across the unfamiliar space. I removed my clothing as instructed, folding each piece neatly before kneeling on the plush carpet, eyes lowered, back straight, hands resting on my thighs. Stretched as I waited, my awareness heightening with each passing minute. When Daniel finally entered, I kept my gaze down as protocol dictated, though I could see he'd changed into black pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his preferred attire for our sessions. "Look at me," he commanded softly. I raised my eyes to find him watching me with that mixture of dominance and tenderness that never failed to make my heart race. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Even in a different country, a different room, you remember exactly how I want you. Yes, Daniel?" He circled me slowly, his gaze almost tangible as it traveled over my naked form. "Tonight will be a test of sorts. A challenge for both of us." My curiosity piqued, but I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I want to see how deeply you can surrender," he explained, coming to stand before me again. "How completely you trust me." From his pocket, he removed something I hadn't seen before, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant. "This is a collar," he said, holding it where I could see it clearly. Not the kind most people would recognize as such, but a symbol. Nonetheless, "If you accept it, you're agreeing to surrender completely to me tonight. No hesitation, no holding back. Do you understand?" The significance of the gesture wasn't lost on me. This wasn't just another session. It was a deeper commitment to our dynamic, a more profound expression of trust. "I understand," I said softly. "And do you accept?" I met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Daniel, I accept." Something like reverence crossed his features as he moved behind me, gently brushing my hair aside to fasten the chain around my neck. The pendant, a small stylized knot in silver, rested at the hollow of my throat, cool against my heated skin. "Stand," he instructed. I rose gracefully, keeping my eyes lowered. His fingers traced the chain around my neck, then tipped my chin up to meet his gaze. "From this moment until I remove this collar, you belong to me completely," he said, his voice low and intense. "Your pleasure, your pain, your surrender, all mine to command, to nurture, to cherish. Do you consent to this?" "Yes, Daniel." The words felt like a vow. "Your safe word remains in effect," he reminded me. "Never hesitate to use it if needed. I understand." His hand moved to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "Then we begin." What followed was unlike any session we'd shared before. More intense, more demanding, pushing boundaries I hadn't known existed. He bound me in positions that left me completely exposed, used implements that balanced exquisitely on the edge between pleasure and pain, brought me to the brink of climax repeatedly, only to deny release throughout it all. I surrendered more deeply than I thought possible, floating in that space between consciousness and oblivion where only sensation existed. The collar around my neck became an anchor, a constant reminder of my willing submission, of the trust between us. When he finally granted release, it crashed through me with such intensity that I cried out his name, tears streaming down my face. From the overwhelming emotion of it, he held me through the aftershocks, his voice a soothing murmur in my ear, praising my surrender, my trust, my beauty and submission. Later, as we lay tangled together in that unfamiliar bed, the collar still around my neck, he asked, "What are you thinking?" I considered the question, trying to articulate the profound shift I'd experienced. "That I understand now," I said finally. "What you meant about this being fundamental to who you are. To who I might be too." He propped himself up on one elbow, studying my face in the dim light. "And how does that make you feel?" "Scared," I admitted, "but not of you or of this. Scared of how right it feels, of how completely I want to surrender to you." His expression softened. "Fear is natural when we discover truths about ourselves, especially when society doesn't always understand or accept. Is that what this is? A truth about myself? Only you can answer that?" He traced the line of the collar with gentle fingers. "But from what I've witnessed, what I've felt from you, yes, I believe it is." I touched the pendant at my throat, feeling its weight, its significance. "Then maybe I don't need to be afraid." "No," he agreed, drawing me closer. "None of this, never of this." As I drifted toward sleep in his arms, I realized that what had begun as curiosity had become something far more profound, not just a role I played, but an expression of something essential in my nature. Something I was only beginning to understand, but that felt more authentic than any identity I'd claimed before. The question now wasn't whether I could accept this part of myself, but how completely I could embrace it and what that would mean for my future, for our future together. My 3 weeks in London passed in a blur of contradictions. Ordinary days exploring the city while Daniel worked. Extraordinary nights exploring the depths of our dynamic. We fell into a rhythm that felt both new and strangely familiar, as if we'd been living this shared life for much longer than we actually had. I worked remotely during my 3rd week, sending edits and attending video meetings from Daniel's temporary office in the apartment. He'd occasionally pass behind me during a call, his hand brushing my shoulder, a subtle reminder of his presence. His claim: on my last evening in London, we walked along the Thames at sunset, the city lights beginning to shimmer on the water. Daniel had been quiet all day, more reserved than usual. "What's on your mind?" I finally asked as we paused to watch a boat passing beneath Tower Bridge. He turned to face me, the fading light casting shadows across his features. "I don't want you to go tomorrow." "I don't want to go either," I admitted. "But my leave is up, and I have that book launch next week." "I know." He took my hands in his. "I've been thinking about what happens when I return to New York." "You mean with us?" My heart quickened. We'd avoided discussing the future, focusing instead on our time together in London. "Yes." He guided me to a nearby bench. "These 3 weeks have shown me something, Olivia. That what we have isn't confined to sessions or scenes. It's not just about dominance and submission in the bedroom. It's about how we fit together in all aspects of life." I nodded, having come to the same realization. "I felt that too." "When I return to New York," he continued, "I want more than what we had before, more than Saturday nights and occasional dinners." "What exactly are you asking?" I needed him to be explicit, to say the words. He took a deep breath. "I'm asking if you'd consider moving in with me, making what we have official, committed." Though I'd half expected it, the request still sent a jolt through me. "That's a big step." "It is," he agreed. "Too big, too soon." I considered the question seriously. 3 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now, after everything we'd shared, the usual timelines seemed irrelevant. "Not too big," I said finally. But I need to know something first. Anything. If I move in with you, what would it mean for our dynamic? Would you expect me to be submissive all the time? Would there be rules outside the bedroom? He nodded, appreciating the seriousness of the question. I've thought about that. I don't want a 24/7 dynamic. I don't think that would be healthy for either of us. You have your career, your independence. I respect that and want you to maintain it. Relief flooded through me. Good, because while I love submitting to you, I'm not looking to give up my autonomy entirely. I wouldn't want you to. He squeezed my hands. What I envision is more fluid. Our dynamic would primarily exist in the bedroom in specifically negotiated scenes. But there might be times, a weekend retreat, perhaps, or even just an evening, where we might extend it by mutual agreement. And day to day, we'd be partners. Equals making decisions together about our shared life. His eyes held mine intently, though I suspect there would always be an undercurrent to our interaction, a certain awareness of our complementary natures. I could imagine it, the balance he described, the flow between our everyday relationship and the deeper dynamic we'd discovered. It felt right, natural. I'd want my own space, I said, thinking practically. A room or office that's just mine. Of course. My apartment has the spare room that could be yours entirely. Or ... He hesitated. We could look for a new place together. Something that would be ours from the beginning. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Let me think about it. Not whether I want to be with you, I do. But the details, the timing. Take all the time you need. He lifted my hand to his lips. Just know that whenever you're ready, I'm here. We walked back to the apartment, hand in hand, the weight of possibility between us. That night, our lovemaking had a different quality, more tender than dominant, more equal than our usual dynamic. As if we were practicing this new balance he'd described, this fluid shifting between roles. The next morning at Heathrow, he held me longer than necessary before I had to pass through security. 3 more weeks, he murmured against my hair. Then I'm home. I'll be waiting, I promised. On the flight back to New York, I turned his proposal over in my mind, examining it from every angle. Moving in together would fundamentally change our relationship, integrating our carefully separated worlds. There were practical considerations, my lease, my furniture, my daily routines, and deeper questions about how our dynamic would evolve. In such close quarters. By the time the plane landed, I'd made my decision. Back in my apartment, I found Lily waiting with takeout and eager questions about London. It was amazing, I told her, curling up on our worn couch. The city, being with Daniel, all of it, and she knew me too well to miss the thoughtful undercurrent in my voice. And he asked me to move in with him when he gets back. Her eyebrows shot up. Wow, that single quote's S. fast. What did you say? That I needed to think about it. I picked up my pad thai. But I think I'm going to say yes. She set her food down, giving me her full attention. Are you sure? I mean, I know you care about him, but living together is a big commitment. Especially with your ... arrangement. We've talked about that. It wouldn't be a full-time dynamic, more like what we have now, but with the option to extend it sometimes. I met her concerned gaze. I know it seems fast, but being with him in London, seeing how we fit together in everyday life, it felt right, Lily, like I found a missing piece of myself. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, if you're sure I support you, but promise me something. What? If it ever stops feeling right, if you ever feel like you're losing yourself rather than finding yourself, you'll be honest about it, with him and with yourself. I promise, I said, touched by her concern. Actually, that's part of why I want to do this. He's the first person I've been with who wants me to be completely honest about my desires, my boundaries, everything. Then I'm happy for you. She raised her wine glass in a toast to new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. Later, alone in my bedroom, I sent Daniel a text. I've been thinking about your question. The answer is yes. Let's find a place together when you get back. His response came within minutes. Despite the time difference, you've made me the happiest man in London. I can't wait to start our life together. 3 weeks suddenly feels like forever. I smiled at the screen, a quiet joy settling in my chest. 3 weeks did feel like forever. But after that, we'd have all the time in the world. The book launch kept me busier than I'd anticipated. The days blurring into an endless cycle of press releases, media coordination, and author handholding. By the time Daniel returned from London, I was exhausted but triumphant. The launch had been a success, earning praise from my boss and a small but significant promotion. Editorial manager, Daniel read from the business card I'd proudly presented. Congratulations. This calls for celebration. We were in his apartment, reunited after 6 weeks apart. The intensity of seeing him again had left me slightly breathless, his physical presence so much more overwhelming than video calls could capture. I thought we might stay in tonight, I suggested, moving closer to him on the couch. I've missed you. His smile was warm, but there was something reserved in his expression. I've missed you too, but before we get distracted, there's something I want to discuss. The serious tone made me sit up straighter. Is everything all right? Yes. He took my hand. It's about us, about our future together. These weeks apart gave me time to think about what I want, what I need in this relationship. A flutter of anxiety stirred in my chest. And I realized that I've been holding something back from you. He met my gaze directly. Something important about how I see our dynamic evolving. I tensed, preparing myself for whatever revelation was coming. Tell me. He took a deep breath. When we discussed moving in together, I described a fluid arrangement, our dynamic primarily in the bedroom, with occasional extensions by agreement. I remember. That's what I thought would be most comfortable for you, most balanced. But if I'm being completely honest, He paused, choosing his words carefully. I want more than that. I want a deeper exchange of power, something that runs as an undercurrent through our daily lives, not just during designated scenes. My pulse quickened. What exactly are you proposing? Not a traditional 24/7 dynamic. I still believe in your autonomy, your independence. But certain aspects that extend beyond the bedroom. Small rituals, protocols, moments of submission woven into our everyday interaction. Like what? I needed concrete examples to understand what he was asking. Like you kneeling for me for a few minutes each evening when I come home. Like having certain decisions, what you wear for special occasions, perhaps, be mine to make. Like wearing my collar not just during scenes, but at specific times we agree upon. I considered his words, trying to imagine the reality he was describing, and what would you give in return? Power exchange goes both ways. A smile of approval crossed his face. Exactly the right question. In exchange, I would provide structure, guidance, protection. I would take responsibility for your pleasure, your growth within our dynamic. I would be attentive to your needs, stated and unstated, and create space for you to explore your submission more deeply. The vision he painted was both frightening and deeply appealing. Would there be rules, consequences? Yes, but ones we would establish together. Nothing that would interfere with your work or friendships. Nothing humiliating or controlling in a negative sense. He squeezed my hand. This would be about enhancing our connection, Olivia. About acknowledging the natural dynamic that already exists between us. I took a moment to truly consider his proposal. The idea of extending our power exchange beyond the bedroom held an undeniable appeal. The freedom I'd found in submission during our scenes was something I'd often wished I could access in other moments, I think. I began carefully. I would be willing to try elements of what you're describing. To start small and see how it feels in practice. Relief and pleasure mingled in his expression. That's all I'm asking for, a willingness to explore this together, to find what works for both of us. But I have conditions, I added, finding my footing in this negotiation. First, my career remains entirely my domain. No interference. No control, not even suggestions unless I explicitly ask for them. Agreed, he said without hesitation. Second, we establish clear boundaries around when the dynamic is in effect and when it isn't. I need to know when I'm expected to be submissive and when we're operating as equals. He nodded. That's reasonable. We could use verbal cues or physical signals to indicate transitions. Third, I continued, regular check-ins. Once a week at minimum, we discuss how things are working, what's feeling good, what needs adjustment. Absolutely. Essential, he agreed. Open communication is the foundation of any power exchange. I took a deep breath, feeling my way through this new territory, and finally, I want the ability to initiate. Not just to respond to your dominance, but sometimes to actively invite it. To have agency in my submission. Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. You continue to surprise me, Olivia. Yes, I want that too. Your active participation, your desire, not just your compliance. The tension in my shoulders eased. Then yes, I'm willing to explore this deeper dynamic with you. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm. Thank you for your trust. We'll move slowly, build this carefully together. How do we start? I asked, curiosity replacing anxiety. Tonight, we reconnect as we have before. His voice took on that commanding edge that never failed to send a shiver through me. Tomorrow, we begin establishing our new patterns, our daily rituals. And now? I looked up at him through my lashes, feeling a familiar heat building between us. His hand moved to cup my face, his thumb tracing my lower lip. Now, I want you to go to the bedroom, undress completely, and kneel at the foot of the bed. Wait. For me there. The familiar instruction centered me immediately, drawing me back into the dynamic we'd established. Yes, Daniel. As I moved to obey, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This evolution he proposed wasn't a departure from what we built, but a natural progression, acknowledging the power exchange that had always existed between us. Even in our ordinary interactions. In the bedroom, I undressed slowly, folding each piece of clothing with deliberate care. Then I knelt at the foot of the bed, back straight, hands resting on my thighs. Eyes lowered, the position that had become second nature over these months together. When Daniel entered a few minutes later, he stood watching me for a long moment. Beautiful, he murmured finally. You have no idea how I've dreamed of coming home to this site. Not just a site, I said softly, looking up at him. A choice, my choice. The most precious kind of gift. He moved toward me, his expression filled with reverence and desire in equal measure, one I promised to honor always. As he reached for me, I knew with sudden clarity that this was what I'd been searching for all along. Not just the thrill of submission, but the profound connection it created between us. A connection that would now extend beyond our sessions into the fabric of our daily lives. I had never felt more seen, more understood, or more free. 3 months later, I stood in the center of our new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the chaos of moving day. The space was a perfect blend of our styles, his minimalist elegance softened by touches of my more eclectic taste. Large windows overlooked Central Park, filling the rooms with afternoon light. What do you think? Daniel asked, coming to stand behind me. Happy with our choice? It's perfect. I leaned back against him, feeling his arms wrap around my waist. Though I'm not looking forward to unpacking all this. We have time, he pressed a kiss to my temple. Rome wasn't built in a day. The past 3 months had been a journey of discovery, learning how to integrate our dynamic into daily life, establishing rituals and boundaries that worked for both of us. There had been missteps along the way, moments of confusion or frustration when expectations didn't align. But the weekly check-ins we'd established provided space to address issues before they became problems. I have found, somewhat to my surprise, that the structure Daniel provided created a freedom I hadn't known I was missing. The small submissions throughout our day, kneeling for 10 minutes each evening, seeking his approval for certain decisions, wearing his collar during our private time at home, anchored me in a way that felt both grounding and liberating. He had kept his promises, respecting my career boundaries absolutely, remaining attentive to my needs, creating space for me to express my submission in ways that felt authentic rather than performative. I have something for you, he said now, turning me to face him, a housewarming gift of sorts. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. My heart skipped, not from anticipation of a ring, but from curiosity about what this particular box might contain. Open it, he encouraged. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, similar in design to the collar he'd given me in London, but more subtle, more appropriate for everyday wear. A small charm dangled from it, the same stylized knot that adorned my collar. It's beautiful, I said softly. It's a day collar, he explained. Something you can wear in public, at work, a symbol of our connection that only we understand. I ran my finger over the intricate knot. I love it. May I? He took the bracelet from the box, waiting for my nod before fastening it around my wrist. This doesn't replace your collar. That remains for our private time. But this is something you can carry with you always, if you choose to. The weight of the bracelet was slight, but I knew its presence would be a constant reminder, not just of him, but of the woman I had become through our relationship. The woman who had discovered strength and surrender, power and submission. Thank you, I touched the charm lightly, for this and for everything. He smiled, understanding all I couldn't articulate. Come, there's one more thing I want to show you. He led me down the hallway to a door we had designated as my office. The space that would be entirely mine as we'd agreed. But when he opened it, I gasped in surprise. The room had been completely set up, my desk positioned perfectly before the window, bookshelves installed and filled with my collection, even artwork hung on the walls. Everything arranged exactly, as I would have done it myself. When did you do this? I asked, stunned. We'd only gotten the keys yesterday. I had some help while you were at your meeting this morning. He looked pleased at my reaction. I wanted you to have one finished space in all this chaos. Somewhere that's completely yours. The thoughtfulness of the gesture moved me deeply. This wasn't about control or dominance. It was about care, about understanding what I needed, even before I knew I needed it. It's perfect, I said, blinking back unexpected tears. Thank you. He drew me into his arms, holding me close. You've given me so much, Olivia. Your trust, your submission. This is a small thing in comparison. But it wasn't small, it was everything. This beautiful balance we'd created together, where power flowed between us like a current, sometimes his to wield, sometimes mine to offer Dot later that evening after hours of unpacking. We opened a bottle of champagne and took it to the bedroom, the one room we'd made sure to set up completely before anything else. Daniel sat against the headboard, and I knelt beside him on the bed, both of us still dressed in the comfortable clothes we'd worn for moving. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. To us, I countered, clinking my glass against his Dot as we sipped the champagne. I felt a contentment I'd never experienced before, a sense of being exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person. Penny for your thoughts? Daniel asked, noticing my introspection. I smiled, setting my glass aside. I was just thinking about that first night at the gallery. How annoyed I was when you told me I was looking at the painting wrong. He laughed softly. You were indignant. It was charming. And now here we are. I gestured around us. Living together, building this unusual but perfect thing between us. Do you ever regret it? He asked, a rare moment of vulnerability showing. Through taking that first step, agreeing to explore this dynamic, I considered the question seriously, as he deserved. No, there have been moments of doubt, of course. Times when I've wondered if I'm giving too much of myself away. But then, I realize I haven't lost anything. I've gained a way of being, of connecting, that I never knew was possible. Relief softened his features. That's how I feel too, like we've discovered something rare together. I moved to kneel properly before him, a deliberate choice rather than a response to command. May I ask you something? Something we haven't really discussed? Of course, anything. What happens next? I held his gaze. Where does this lead, ultimately? He set his own glass aside, giving the question his full attention. If you're asking about marriage, children, those traditional steps, I'm open to them if and when you are. But I don't see them as necessary milestones we must reach. And our dynamic? Would it change with those steps? It would evolve, certainly. Adapt to new circumstances. He reached out to touch my face gently. But the essence of it, the trust, the exchange of power, the freedom we find in our respective roles, that wouldn't change unless we wanted it to. I nodded, satisfied with his answer. I don't need those traditional steps right now. I just wanted to know if they were possible within what we've built. Everything is possible, Olivia. His thumb traced my lower lip. That's the beauty of what we have. We write our own rules, create our own path. Together, I murmured. Together, he agreed, leaning forward to kiss me. As the kiss deepened, I felt that familiar surrender beginning. The letting go that had once seemed so frightening but now felt like coming home. My hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, a silent request. "Are you sure?" he asked, drawing back slightly. "You must be exhausted from moving." "I'm sure." I met his gaze directly. "I want to celebrate our first night here properly." A slow smile spread across his face, that dominant expression I'd come to crave. "Then kneel on the floor," he instructed, his voice taking on that commanding edge. "And we'll begin." I moved to obey, settling on my knees beside the bed, back straight, hands resting on my thighs, the position that had become a gateway to my deepest surrender. "Look at me," he commanded softly. I raised my eyes to his, feeling that familiar current pass between us, the electricity of power freely given and reverently received. "Tell me what you want, Olivia." The question was part of our ritual now, a reminder that my submission was always a choice, always an active participation rather than passive acceptance. "I want to surrender to you," I said, the words coming easily. Now, without embarrassment or hesitation. "To let go completely, knowing you'll catch me." "And I will," he promised, his eyes never leaving mine. "Always." As he rose from the bed and stood before me, I felt a profound gratitude for this man who had shown me a part of myself I might never have discovered otherwise. For the journey we had taken together from that first meeting at the gallery to this moment in our new home. The first time he told me to kneel, I had surprised myself with how desperately I wanted to obey. Now I understood why, not because I was weak or subservient, but because in that act of surrender, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed, the strength to be vulnerable, the courage to be seen completely, the freedom that comes from trusting absolutely as Daniel's hand reached to tilt my chin upward. I met his gaze with perfect clarity and certainty. This was where I belonged. This was who I was meant to be, and I wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that had brought us here.